Hello, in this video we'll continue talking about loops and file. Today we'll talk about files. So the idea of the file is instead of taking input from keyboard or printing in a screen, we can take input from a file and print to a file. So we can use files for input and output. Why we use files? Because files in the files we have permanent storage. So the file will be stored in the hard disk and the data will stay there even we close the computers or the program finished. So that's why we use files. For simple data storage, we will use files, but if you have complicated data to store, you will use later a database. So what's the steps to write or read from a file? You open the file, you use the file for read or write or both, and then you close the file. We will use a package called or a library called fstream. So we need to include fstream at the beginning of every program that will use files to write or read. And then we can use three stream types: if stream for input stream file, or OF stream for output to a file, or F stream if you want to read and write to the file. So before we using these streams, we need to define objects from them. So if you want to read from a file, you write if stream in file. If you want to store to a file, you write OF stream output file. After that, you need to link the input file with a file name. So how to do that? If you want to input a file, in file.open, and you write the file that you want to read from. And this file has to exist in the same folder of the program. If it does not exist, you will not be able to read this file. And output file, you need to write the file that you want to create. So the program will create this file for writing. If the file already exists, it will delete the content and override the new content. So if we try to open a file, but this file does not exist, if we try to open a file for input to read from it, but this file does not exist, usually you will get this in file to be something like false. So if not in file means if in file is false and this operation was not successful, in this case we will print file not open failure or file not found or any error message. How to write to a file or to read from a file? You just use same things like cin, cout. So instead of writing cout, one sentence, you can write output file, the object that we define, and then you write the sentence or the value that you want to store in the file. Also, you can input same way, like you can input to a variable. You take from the file, you input to a variable, same like cin. Usually we use loops to read and write in files, okay? So the nice thing is that this operator can give me true or false. Give me false if I cannot read any value more from the file, and give me true if I can read from the file. So I can use while input file, input a number. So this will keep inputting values and storing it in the variable number until I reach end of the file. And at the end of the file, we need to close the file. Okay, so usually if we didn't close, the operating system will close, but it's highly recommended that we close ourselves because otherwise we might get problems. So let us see example and explain the last concept here. So this is example about reading from a file. So we need to include fstream. This is new. Because we want to read from the file, we write input file stream and then we give a name. We can give it x, y, z, but here the name is input file. Okay. We define a string, the file name, and we define number of type integer. And then we ask the user to enter the file name. We store the file name in a string. So, and then we will open the file name. So we ask the user which file name you want to open, and then we take the file name .cstring, cstr. Why we use cstr? Because the string that we want to give and open, it has to be C type string. There are two types of string, the common string object, and there is something called C type string. So the things that we have to give here, it has to be C string, but this value is normal string. So that's why we write filename.cstr. So this is only in case you want to ask the user to write the input file. But otherwise, if you know the input file, just write the input file here and it will be open. We check if input file, if reading from the file was successful, we will make a loop. Input file number, we read all the numbers from the file, we store it in number. Every time we store it, we print it in a new line, and at the end we close the file. Else means like reading the file was not successful. In this case, we will print error message. So this was the example. And the last section in this chapter is about break and continue. We can use break in the middle of the loop. In this case, the break will, if it was reached, this statement, it will end the loop. So we will go out of the loop directly. And usually it's not highly recommended to use a break because it's make the code difficult to read. Same thing continue. If you have continue inside the loop, it will skip the rest of this loop, this iteration, and it will move to the next iteration. If it was in the middle of while or do while loops, it will just go directly to checking the test again and try to make a new iteration. If it's for loop, in the middle of the for loop, it will update like I++, for example, and then check the condition again. So again, like break, don't use continue and break much, only if you need it, because they make the code difficult to read. So that's it. See you in the next video.